Hey, everybody. Today on the show, we're going to hear from a chiropractor who has raised millions and millions of dollars from other chiropractors and business owners to build his own real estate empire. Very happy to welcome Dr. Alex Tam to the show. Alex, how are you?
Doing great, Jonathan. Thank you for having me on.
So tell people what it is that you do right now. I mean, I want to dig into your story and how you got to where you are right now, but give us like, if you had to give, you meet somebody at a party and tell them what it is that you do, what is it that you do?
Well, on the real estate side, we help other doctors get into multifamily deals that on their own, they wouldn't have even heard of, right? And help them build a real estate portfolio and achieve financial income. And hopefully, my goal is to have their financial passive income exceed their expenses. That's the number one goal I tell doctors. I say, if we can get you there, now you have really financial freedom.
And on the chiropractic side, you're still practicing, you still have your practice, or you're doing real
I still have the
full-time?
practice. We have a couple doctors in there, 5 other staff members, and they're going strong. I'm in the practice a few days a week still, just to make sure everything's running well. But slowly but surely, my goal is to have less and less time in the practice, more working on the practice.
Do you still see patients, or you past
Here
that
and
now?
there, here and there.
Yeah.
I still see a few patients, not that many. We have other 2 phenomenal doctors that are in the office that are seeing other patients. So, but there are still some patients I've been seeing for 12, 13, 14 years that still would like to see me on a weekly basis, on a regular basis.
So let's kind of dig into the story a little bit, and let's just go back. And I mean, I'd like to know, so why was it that you decided to become a chiropractor in the first place? What was, what was in your mind when you were, I don't know, in college, or whenever it was that you were like, okay, I want to be a chiropractor. What was that all about?
John, that's a great question. Being in college, my whole idea was to become a medical doctor. I wanted to be practicing medicine. In 2002, my mom suffered from trigeminal neuralgia. So going through college, the doctors were giving her medications, shots, Botox, all along the head and neck, but nothing helped, right? So that went on for 2 long years. And finally, a natural doctor, a chiropractor, we went to see, drove about 3 hours away to see this doctor. And within 3 months, he was able to improve her symptoms by over 50%. At that moment, I thought, what is this doctor doing? And once I dug in more into it, I said, you've helped my mom so much. I want to help others just like you. And the year after, I enrolled in chiropractic school. After 3 years of chiropractic school, opened my practice in 2009, and here we are.
So, I mean, that's interesting to me. So usually when you hear about, medical doctors, there's medical school, and there's like residency, and there's internship, and then they go work for somebody else. And like opening your own practice is pretty far down the road. And probably most people never even get there, right? So the fact that you're like, how were you able to open a chiropractic practice like right after you got out of school? Is that normal, or was that unusual?
It's not normal.
Yeah.
Normal is you work for a doctor for a few years, you contemplate whether or not you want to have a business, right? I had mentors while I was in chiropractic school. I took a different route. When I was in chiropractic school, I was already going to chiropractor seminars to learn beyond what the school was teaching. I had mentors in my life that says, this is how you run a practice. And instead of only interning at the school, I went to 3 other practices the last year and a half of school to learn, like, what do they do from day to day? I was doing exams, making coffee, never made coffee in my life, but that's what I did, right? Learn that, you got to run down the street and get pens because you guys are running out. Highlighters. I learned the day-to-day, the grind. And what I realized is, oh my gosh, I love something like this. I would love the opportunity to do something like that. But I took a year and a half while I was in school full-time to learn that skill. So I knew whether I find a mentor when I first came out, or if I needed to open my practice, it could be A or B. And tell you the truth, Jonathan, my A option was to find a mentor. Mm-hmm. And I found one initially in Sacramento. My graduation was in September. I spoke with her in May. She says, yes, we have a room. I'm only in the practice a couple days a week. You got the other 5 days all to your own. Well, I went to chat with her again in August. She failed to tell me that in July, she met a guy. She's closing down her practice and it's moving 4 hours away. So I said, you got to be kidding me, right? And I knew that plan B was for me to open a practice. I said, okay, I've been shadowing other doctors, doing what a practice needs, right? Overseeing, just being able to see everything. I've had mentors. There's a consulting group I've already been part of for the last 6 to 8 months. Let's see if I'm ready. I start looking at the spaces and found a spot in March, build it out, took 2 months, and May 27, 2009 is when we opened our doors.
And so where did you come up with the money to build out the space and rent the space?
Got to get a loan.
Okay.
You got to get a loan, a loan that over time you just pay back.
So it's like like an SBA loan, or what kind of loan did you get?
Like an SBA bank loan.
Yeah, just to start your own business with.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm just guessing. So when you first started out, it was just you, right? So you in a room
it was
with
just
some
me.
equipment, and you're just doing your chiropractic on people and
yeah,
just kind of working.
I mean, I knew I needed an assistant. Right? Before I even had patients, I hired an assistant.
Okay.
Because I knew I wanted to excel and grow fast. I've learned from other doctors how to promote myself, market myself, right? I went to every single business in my town and the town next door to hand out cards and brochures. I went to all the Chamber of Commerce meetings, weekends. We did trade shows, home shows, you name it, I've done it.
So how long was it? So you said you opened in May 2009. So how long did it take you to get enough patients that you were, like profitable and making money and stuff? How long did that take?
Oh, year one, we were profitable.
Yeah.
I'd make sure I was always in the black, right? You had to put from the loan, we put in a lot of money into building the practice. But by month 2 and 3, we were profitable. But all the money that we profited, we put it right back into the business. I didn't take any money out for the first year and a half. Everything went right back in, right?
And how were you supporting yourself at the time?
Thank God my wife was a doctor of physical therapies, and she was able to support us with her salary, live below our means, and was able to, even purchase a home, and we still live in the same home today, and went away from there.
Yeah. So basically, you were able to invest in the future, right? I mean, you were willing to defer present gratification in order to build something bigger for the future.
I'm no stranger to delayed gratification. And that's why when I learned about real estate, it was right in my alley.
Well, I want to get there, but I just want to stick on this topic a little bit because I think it's really interesting, and kind of like, I'm sure a lot of what you learned then you draw on now in real estate. But, one thing that you definitely remind me of is, the idea that you guys decided to live below your means in order to build something bigger for the future. When I was a lawyer, I was the sole breadwinner in my family, and we were saving more than half of my salary every year, right? We were just putting money in the bank. And my friends who were lawyers would be complaining, I have no money. And I'd be looking at them going, well, I know how much money you make because you make the same amount as I do. And I know that your wife is also a lawyer. So you guys basically make 2 times as much as I do. How could you have no money? And then you dig into it, it's well, they both have fancy cars, and they had a country, summer house out in the Hamptons, and the kids are in private school. And sort of every single dime was accounted for before it came in the door, and I was like, I don't want to live like that. I want to always know that whatever's coming in, I've got more than enough, and I can walk away from this job anytime I want to because I've got savings, so. And the only way I was able to start this business of mine was because I had that cushion, right? And if I had lived mouth, hand to mouth, there's no way I could have taken a risk, so I applaud you for, that kind of foresight, right? Of reinvesting in yourself.
Doesn't that take a lot of discipline?
I mean,
Big time.
for me, it was natural that because I've always been like that, but I guess it does take discipline, right? I mean, it's easy when you have a lot of money to just start spending it, but
Yeah. So you probably built that discipline from the get-go.
yeah, I think I was just like that as a kid, but
Right.
well, it's yeah. Well, that's you're not a psychologist, so I have to get a psychologist on to talk about money at some other time. But anyway, so all right, so 2009, you've launched your practice, you're already making money, right? You're doing well. So kind of tell me what happens next. I mean, so when did you start like adding other doctors to your practice and getting leverage in your practice?
Around 2012. 2011, 2012.
And was that like go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was when we added our first doctor into the practice. And at the time we had only 1,600 square feet. It was me, 2 assistants, and 1 doctor. There were only 4 of us in there. And
was that like a big mental leap for you to add somebody else, or was that always part of your plan? Were you always thinking
that was always the plan?
So as soon as I built up, did you have like a some kind of metric to help you decide, like when I get this busy, or when I'm making this much money, or what was the trigger that you were waiting for to say, okay, now it's time to bring in somebody else?
That's a great question. I talked to other doctors about that from the get-go. I don't remember exactly what that number was, but it was to the point where there was a number where we had to shoot for, where that number with the doctor, the expense of the doctor has to cover all the expenses, of course, that we have to bring in, and at least 20 to 30% more, right? Profit, so that the company could be sustainable even after everyone takes the salary. And that way you're able to build a cushion, you see, and be able to grow. I was working 6-7 days a week to build up to that point in order for us to do that. We used to be open 5.5 days a week, and I'll be there from 7 a.m. in the morning until about 6:30. And then on Saturdays, I'll come in from 8 to 12. Right. And that was my schedule for at least 2 to 3 years, 3 years at least. But then eventually we brought in the 1 doctor, and finding the right person, that's been the more difficult thing, especially at the beginning when I didn't know how to hire, didn't know what to look for. Right. That's where I had all my other mentors to really lean on, and that they've helped a lot.
Did you make some bad hires at that? Like, did you have people that you had to let go, or?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
We still do. Because people interview a lot of times way better than they actually who they are. Their true person comes out under some stress. When you've seen it long enough, right around the 2 to 3 week mark, usually you'll start to see little things peaking, right? And that's when you know. Sometimes we really do our due diligence in the hiring process, asking all the right questions, tests and whatnot, calling references to make sure that we don't have a high turnover, right? But then sometimes people get through the cracks.
And how long do people typically stay with you before they turn over?
Assistants, I mean, we've had our longest assistant now for 2 years. My longest one before that was 6 years. We've had doctors from 1.5 years to 2-3 years. So it really depends.
And are those doctors usually then going on to like start their own practice, or are they just kind of hopping practices?
We've had 2 that went to start their own practice. The other one got married, engaged, moved down south to LA. Another one got a divorce and moved somewhere else. So it really depends. We haven't had too many doctors because ultimately we've only had 1 doctor at a time. And we just started having 2 doctors or 2 providers in the last couple of years. So we're waiting to find out, what other scenarios there could be.
And I'm sorry, I might have missed this, but how many locations do you have? Just 1 location, or you have multiple locations?
Right now, just 1. Once we get this one stabilized, there's a potential for us to open a second.
All right. So that brings us like pretty current. So when was it? And thank you for that. I find that really interesting. So when did you start kind of dipping into real estate? What was behind that?
2018. Well,
2018.
actually 2017. Let's go back even the year before. I found out about multifamily in 2018. 2017, we purchased a single family. And we purchased a single family, run back and forth, trying to figure everything out with the realtor, the handyman, and all that. And boy, I said, I'm doing all this for like $150 of cash flow a month. You got to be kidding me, right? Then in 2018, I went to a conference. I went to the 10X Grant Cardone conference, heard about syndications, didn't know what the word even was. I was there for business. I was not there for real estate. Found out what it was. And for the same amount of money, we can get 4 times the return. So we invested with him, sold the house, put more money with Cardone, learned about bigger pockets, and then started investing with other operators and syndicators, done well. And we did that from 2018 to 2021. And in 2021, we joined Jake and Gino. And Jake and Gino, great education. Joined Jake and Gino, MIH Mastermind. And from there in 2022, we've been GPs in 3 deals and also JVs in 5 JVs. And we've got a few more this year.
So tell me about the first deal that you got into as a GP. Like, how did that come about?
That came about, really, I realized real estate's all about relationships. You know, people talk about the numbers, the locations. Yes, those absolutely matter. No doubt. You got to look at the numbers. You got to know everything. But the relationship is huge. We connected with a couple 3 weeks before they reached out to a group and says, hey, we had one of the KPs backed out. You know, we have a GP spot available. And I said, oh, I know these guys. We just chatted a few weeks ago. They're good people. They live close by. And I gave them a call. And I said, hey, what's the deal with this? Oh, Alex, let's go over the numbers, right? I'm all about taking action. A lot of people are like in the chat, they said, oh yeah, shoot me over the numbers. Love to get to know, da, 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 da. I just gave them a call. I said, hey, what's going on? They went over everything with me. And they said, hey, Alex, can you raise as well? I said, I don't know. How far along are you guys? Right? We talked to a couple of doctors, brought some people in. And that was the journey from the get-go. You know, we went to see the property. Wow, we liked it. So that was it, right? But we were just educating ourselves at the time and really wanted to get our foot in the door, right, with good operators. So they trusted us. We looked at their values. We enjoyed what they were doing, and that's how we got in. But it's all about the relationships.
And so you raised money for them. That was the first kind of foot in the door.
Yeah, we raised, we're KPs. So, yeah.
And so tell me about that, you know, raising money from people. You hadn't done it before, I presume. Like, what was that like and how did you approach it?
Well, the reason why I went into active real estate was because we had a lot of friends that were asking me, hey, Alex, what is this real estate thing that you were doing? And at the time, back in 2020, I would just say, hey, why don't you just go on Bigger Pockets and read this article, or go on this Capital website and read their article. And every time we connect during a seminar, hey, did you guys check that out? Oh, tell me more. I said, you didn't even look at it? Right? Oh, no, whatever you do, just let me know when there's an opportunity. Well, I didn't feel comfortable to say, hey, get into this. I do it, but I didn't feel comfortable to tell other people to do the same if I didn't know the ins and outs of it, like an active investor. And that's when we joined Jake and Gino, to be actively educated in the deal, so that when I bring someone in, I have to know the ins and outs of the deal, right? Where they're getting the rent comps. What does insurance look like? What's property taxes look like? I got to know the underwriting, right? So that I can justify, hey, take $100,000 worth of your hard-earned money that you've saved and put it into this deal. I've got money into it as well. Right. So it's my due diligence. My due diligence went up when I started getting investors into the deal compared to when I was just in the deal.
But in terms of getting investors into the deal, like what did you actually do? I mean, just pick up the phone and start calling people who, who did you call? Why did you call them? What did you say to them? Talk a little bit about, especially on that sort of early first time around. Like, what did you actually do?
The first time around was actually a lot easier because people already knew. The ones that I've talked to, it's been the same people I've been talking to for years, right? So when I told them I was being active, I said, hey, I got a deal. If you're interested, let me know. What's the buy-in? 75,000. Okay. What is it? Send me some stuff, right? Send them some stuff. A week later, I ask them, you guys ready? They're like, yeah, let's roll. So the first deal was actually easy, right? But as you start meeting new people who didn't know you from before, that's where the social media and the education that I do, being on podcasts, having articles, blogs, that's where it becomes really, really important because now you have social proof on what you've done. You've posted the accomplishments that you've had, some of the failures too, right? And that's how you ultimately start building trust.
Was that how much money did you raise on the first go? The first time you tried to raise money, how much money were you able to raise?
The first time was like $250. The deal is already pretty much fully funded, almost, right? But to be part of the GP, and you got to raise some money and you got to play your part. Raising money, asset management. My wife did some of that as well. KP. I mean, that's how we did it.
And then so from there, so you said the first one was easy because you were talking to people you'd already been talking to for a while. But like, how did you make the leap into then like going outside of your immediate circle and raising money? So you mentioned a moment ago that like, you do social media, you do some education and stuff, but obviously that didn't happen overnight. Like, how did you start building that funnel to start bringing in investors?
You have to do it. You have to strategize. See, I built our medical office working with virtual assistants. So in 2016, I have my first virtual assistant. By the time I got into real estate, I had 6 virtual assistants already. And from there, we hired a couple more to build up our social media branding. We have bloggers, social media managers. We have 2 video editors. So we have a whole team of marketing behind me that I've built and put together for the medical practice. So to build real estate, I said, okay, so this is really not that different. Now we just have to speak a different language, but do the exact same thing and build it up so that when I go to medical conferences, yes, we talk about health, we talk about the practice, but more doctors come up to me wanting to know more about real estate than anything, right? So that if we were to have a deal that went live and they will be ready, I put them into my CRM, they get a drip campaign and they get to really learn more about our past deals, what we do, right? They learn about who I am on a personal level as well. And they know about my practice, the integrity and the hard work that we put into building our practice. And I believe how you do anything is how you do everything, right? If you haven't raised money before, well, yeah, how would they trust me, right? Well, they trust me partially because they've seen me at a different setting outside of real estate, building something amazing and having similar core values to them. And that's where I think we make a real huge connection.
I mean, it's interesting. You've followed a methodology that I always recommend to people. People come to me and they'll say, "Oh, I have imposter syndrome. I've never done a deal before. Why is anybody going to listen to me?" Right?
Yeah.
And I always say to them, well, it depends on who you're talking to, right? So if you are let's just say, because you're using the medical example, pick something else. I mean, just say you're a lawyer, right? If you go talk to other lawyers, you already have credibility because you're one of them, right? And you could speak their language. So you're not an imposter with respect to them.
No.
And you can speak their language as a lawyer and build a relationship with them as a lawyer, so that when it comes to then when you turn around and say, hey, look, I've got this real estate deal. Is this something you're interested in? You already have the credibility. You don't need the separate credibility as a real estate investor, right? Because you've already got the credibility as a lawyer. And it doesn't matter what background it is. And there's so many different ways you can do this, as long as when you start out, you're targeting people who are, that you belong to that group, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to pretend to be something you're not. I think the problem arises when people don't niche down to a specific audience, and they try to just like pitch the world on them being a real estate investor. And if in that case, if they don't have a track record, well, of course, then it's hard to get people to listen to you, because you don't have, there's nothing for them to kind of hang their hat on as to why they should trust you, because you don't have the real estate credibility yet, and you don't have some separate credibility to use to build trust with. So what you did is like, exactly what I always coach people to do. Like, start where you are with the people that are part of your circle, that you're doing the same thing that they are, and you have the credibility to start with. So
absolutely. Yeah. If I went to pitch to a group of lawyers, it wouldn't even make sense.
So I'm curious, like, how much of your marketing for the real estate business kind of mixes medicine and real estate?
A lot.
Yeah. So talk about that. I mean, because this is very interesting to me, because that the idea that like I think a lot of people think like, oh, I have to just talk about the real estate, the deal, right? Not talking about myself, or not talking about this other thing that we're all involved in. But how much are you kind of like mixing the two up when you're doing your social media, or you're doing your other marketing?
Well, my personal channel talks about real estate. It talks about health as well. And people that have known me for a while, they just know that, right? On top of that, we also have a virtual assistant agency that helps other doctors and real estate professionals. So it helps the same two groups, but it mingles. It's funny, when I go to real estate conferences, people talk to me about virtual assistants and their health. I go to doctor conferences and they talk to me about real estate, right? So it's a dynamic where everything mingles. It's just who I am, and how I built each one is completely related. I felt overwhelmed in 2016. I started hiring virtual assistants. By now, I have 10, 11 virtual assistants. Everybody wants to know how I work with virtual assistants. So we built a company to help other people find virtual assistants. I was putting money in the stock market, riding the waves just like everyone else. Realized that this isn't going to be going anywhere. Long-term is crazy, right? And needed help with, how do I work with the IRS and lower my income, taxable income, right? Wow, it's either real estate or oil and gas, right? And I said, well, let me try to look into real estate. Went to a seminar and found out, wow, this is amazing. This is way better than single family real estate, multifamily real estate, life-changing. I dove into that, and I did it for 4 years before I start telling other people to, hey, if you're thinking about it too, and you were in the same situation, come learn about what I do, right? I was in the weeds doing it. So I know both sides. I know what it was like to struggle to not have that passive income, right? To now where we have it. And same thing in business. I know what it was like to be overwhelmed, and with the help of virtual assistants, to not be like that, right? To buy back time. So because I've been in their shoes, I feel like the best ideal person that we do business with a lot of times is myself 3 to 5 years ago. That's who's our main contacts.
And so what does your marketing consist of now? Like, what are the kinds of things that you do?
On a regular basis, our virtual assistant puts up video idea scripts for me to do. Coming on the podcast is great, right? Showing others what I do in my day-to-day life and reaching out to them on discovery calls, making sure that we have a CRM that is following up with people, right? Making sure that one of my virtual assistants is calling other people as well to schedule phone calls with me. So going to different Zoom calls throughout the week that are in real estate so that we stay active in the group. So we know exactly what's going on. People talk about their needs and what's their struggles, right? Being part of 2 different masterminds and looking over, oh, okay, this is what's happening. And you just learn from each other. I always learn from people that have done it longer, that have more experience, and share what I've learned with those others who are coming up as well, because that's how I got educated from the get-go.
So you seem to have a pretty well-oiled machine in place. But I'm curious, what mistakes have you made? Like, what are things that you would have done differently if you were to do it all over again?
I would have gotten into multifamily sooner, actively. I tell you that, right? I was very passive, and for 4 years, I was completely passive. I wish I would have gotten and done it sooner. I think other than that, there's not much I would have changed other than what I've done already, because I felt like what we have done so far and the company that we've built and the trust that we've built in the communities that we belong to has been phenomenal. And it's been a great journey.
I want to go back to something you said a little while ago. You talked about being a GP on deals and JVing deals. How would you describe the difference between those 2 things?
Well, with JV, you're really putting your own money in, right? And it's 3 to 4, maybe 5 people at most putting together, and you got to knock it out on your own, right? So everyone is completely very involved, and you don't have the responsibilities are there, but it's a little different. I find that it's somewhat a little bit less stressful because, yes, you're going to make decisions, but the decisions are a little bit less stress due to the fact that you don't have millions of dollars with investors' money into it as well, right? So can we be a little bit more aggressive and test different things when we're on JVs? Yeah, if the partners agree, let's go for it. Whereas in syndications, we have to make sure that we do it right, right? There's no testing. You see, JVs, you can kind of test out the different strategies. But in a syndication, you better make sure you know what you're doing, right? And I would say that's the ultimate difference for me.
When you're doing a JV deal, what role do you fill? If you're not raising money, what's your function in the JV?
We're part of asset management. So asset management in terms of making sure that, okay, if one of the turns coming up, sometimes we even help out the property management, leasing, right? Sometimes property management is not going to be 100%, or you don't have great ones, and you have to help out. I would have to get, one of my virtual assistants, she's phenomenal. She gets on a call and start calling leads. The leads directly go to her. And there are times where we do better with that, almost like a hybrid system, if you will. So we help out any way that we can. We usually work with operators that are boots on the ground in phenomenal locations, and they have a crew, right? They have contractors that they know, okay, and they're operating it on their end. You got the property management, so we help with the asset management.
And do you have any particular geographical focus for where you're investing, or is it kind of all over?
We invest quite a bit in Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Lincoln, Omaha, Nebraska, Waco, Texas, different parts of Texas. So those are our ideal areas. And the key thing for me is not so much just the location, but the people that we've met in these locations. Because you can be in a phenomenal location, right? Like those recent deals that came up, foreclosed in Houston. And phenomenal locations, cities, great markets, terrible operators, that didn't operate it correctly, right? And a lot of people lost money in those deals. So for me, I look more at the operators and the location than just the location on its own.
Any tips that you would share with, doctors, chiropractors, other people in the medical fields who kind of maybe they're nibbling around the edges of real estate, they haven't kind of taken a bite yet? Like, what's your advice to them to get started in this?
My advice to them is, if you've got extra money laying around that aren't really doing anything, anyone who's making over 6 figures, chances are you're getting hit with taxes, right? And the income that you are earning from stocks, most people think, oh, if I get 10%, it's great. Yeah, but that 10%, you get hit with a 40% tax, you're really only getting 6%. Whereas in real estate, a deal that might look like it's only 7 or 8%, but because a lot of it is, depreciated, right? So you're getting the full 8%, which is better than a 10% stock deal where you're only getting 6. I say just dip your feet, get your feet wet. How did someone get into stocks? They got into stocks because someone told them it was a great idea and everybody else is doing it, right? In multifamily real estate, not everyone's doing it, but that's where it's, you get to really, that's how I transform my life. I'm not telling people that that's what they should do. I'm telling them that, hey, there's something else out there, right? And you should look into it too.
So if somebody wants to get their feet wet, they want to jump into the pool finally, and they would like to talk to you more about how they could do that, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Get in touch with me on LinkedIn. My cell phone number is 775-717-0090. Shoot me a text and I'll send them a Calendly link and we hop on a call, right? To see if it's even a right fit for you. If they're trying to invest their money and try to get out in like a year or so, real estate's not it. Not this real estate, right? This is a longer term hold, 3, 4, 5, 7 years, sometimes even 10 years, depending on the hold. So it's got to be, they got to have liquid. It's got to be liquid, right? They got to have liquid capital ready, available to deploy, and knowing that this is going to earn over time. It's not a get rich quick type thing.
Do you have a website for people to go to if they want to read up on you, see your social media
Absolutely.
stuff, etc.?
Absolutely. Yeah. ZephyrEquityGroup.com. And you can just search my name, Alex Tam, on all the social media. And I promise you, I'll pop up.
All right. Well, everyone, I highly encourage you to go look up Alex Tam, look up Zephyr Realty, you said? Is that
Zephyr Equity Group?
Zephyr Equity Group. Check him out. By all means, get in touch with Alex. Shoot him a text. It'll be very valuable for you if you do. And Alex, I'd really like to thank you for being on the show today. And it's great to finally meet you.
Jonathan, thank you so much. We'll talk to you later.